A trigger, an event. It reminds the veteran of the trauma. Okay? Re-experiencing symptoms. And it's very important. That can be external, sound, smell, environment, or it can be internal, thought, self-guilt, blame, memory. When that happens, when you get triggered, that whole process of the amygdala going off in the fight, flight, or freeze, that happens while bypassing your thinking brain. And you become hyper-aroused, or as I call it, the combat mode. The veteran is now triggered, and they're in combat mode, and they're reacting, and they're not thinking. The amygdala is in control. That really sucks when that happens. I don't know how else to say it. It's a horrible experience, especially if you're in the park with your family and it goes off and that thing happens. So what the veteran does is they begin to avoid any situation that could possibly cause that experience, and they begin to self-medicate to numb out the internal voices. Trigger, re-experiencing, hyperarousal, avoidance, and numbing. How do I control my external stimuli? How can I control that most people are going to go on the 4th of July and set off fireworks? How do I control that? I can't. I can't go to all my neighbors and stop them. So what do? I isolate. I begin to isolate. I push them away. That's how the veteran controls their external stimuli. And how do we stop the internal stimuli? The constant nightmares and guilt and replaying in my mind of situations over and over and over again every day for the last 12 years since I've been home. How do I stop that? Self-medication. This is where most of you, when a veteran asks you for help in your professional line of work, or you find one in your profession, I know you're all from different walks of life, this is where you're probably going to find them, in a state of isolation and self-medication. Getting rid of all the external stimuli because I don't want to be triggered. It causes hyperarousal, causes me to go into the combat mode, so I'm going to avoid all of that, isolation. And the internal stimuli, the nightmares and the self-blame and the guilt, self-medication. That's where I found myself after 4 years of trying to do it the way the military had trained me. Hard and fast and strong and never ask for help and never show weakness. That's where I found myself after 4 years. The symptoms just kept getting worse and worse. Like the more I fought them, the more they developed. My warrior training, that hardcore drive on that kept me alive in the military, now prevented me from asking for help. We don't ask for help in the military. We're not trained to do that. We don't know how. I did not know how to ask for help. My mission, if you remember from the beginning, was to keep myself alive, keep my buddies alive, and accomplish the mission. That's what I did in the combat zone. Now I was home. My mission was to be home, to spend time with my son, to possibly fall in love, to go back to college, and I was failing at that mission. My buddies over there were my unit, but back home was my son and my wife. And one day, after 4 years of suffering from this, it occurred to me. The military trains us to eliminate threats. That's what I was trained to do, eliminate the threat in the combat zone. Now I'm home. The mission of taking my life back over and living again, I'm failing at it miserably because of these symptoms. And the biggest threat to my son and to my wife is this crazy veteran who lives in our house and gets drunk and goes off and is afraid of fireworks and is always in this state of isolation and self-medication. And in the spring of 2008, it just snapped in my head one day and I said, I know what to do about this. The military trained me what to do about this. The mission is failing. There's a threat to my buddies. Eliminate the threat. I am the threat. So in the spring of 2008, I took as many sleeping pills, muscle relaxants, everything the VA had thrown at me for those 4 years. Every medication I could find, Benadryl, everything. and washed it down with a bottle of whiskey and decided I was just going to eliminate the threat. Some of you, if you're combat engineers or infantry, may be wondering how that story ends. So I'm just going to tell you, I survived. In case you were worried. It was a very dark time. It was a very lonely time. And it's a place where I find a lot of the veterans I work with in a constant state of isolation and self-medication. The choice becomes to eliminate the problem, which is me. When the hope you've been searching for is so very far away, and you hear your worst enemy, every word you say, when the light shines so dim that you cannot see your hands, and letting go the only way you know to escape your pain. Hold on, hold on, hold on for one more day. Hold on, hold on, hold on for one more day. When you think that you've seen the end and it's all that you can take, and you'd give everything you own just to catch your breath today. When it don't let up, you feel so down and there's nowhere to turn, and you look all around and you find that you've lost all your faith in you, then there's nothing left for you to do except to hold on, hold on, hold on. One more day. Hold on, hold on, hold on for one more day. The simple things that used to make you smile, now you say, hell, it's been a long, long time since I felt so good like I thought I would, like I knew I should one day. When you've given up and you've given in and you lost your life to a ball of sin, and you just can't win no matter how you try. You fall down on your knees and you start to cry, and I said, hold on, hold on, hold on for one more day. Hold on, hold on, hold on for one more day. When you've lost your will to speak and a little reprieve is all you seek, some peace of mind suit you fine, and things will go right for me for just one time. Then you throw your hands up to the air, everybody just looks and stares, and they say I've been there, but they don't know, 'cause the light just fades, darkness grows. So I said, hold on, hold on, hold on for one more day. Hold on, hold on, hold on for one more day. Thank you. I survived that suicide attempt, but many do not. 22 veterans take their lives every single day. I'm going to repeat that. I travel around the country giving this performance. I talk to a lot of people. Sometimes it just doesn't register because it's just so much. 22 veterans every single day take their lives, plus one active duty. 22 veterans every day. We lose more veterans to suicide than we have in the combat zone. More veterans come home, survive the combat experience, come home, cannot deal with the symptoms of PTSD, and choose to take their own lives than the enemy could ever possibly imagine killing. Every single year since the Iraq and Afghanistan conflict started, with the exception of 2004 for the Battle of Fallujah. Why? This is the question. Why? Well, post-traumatic stress disorder, obviously, and I hope I've illustrated that a little bit. And I've got some ideas, some other ideas as to why. Because the military training did not prepare me to ask for help or to be weak and to need help. We can't, as veterans, or we don't know how to ask for help. In addition, our society in general, in this room, is not collectively at war with the veterans the way we have been in the past. In World War II, 12% of the United States population was serving in the military in some way, right? They're rationing butter, there's a draft, the entire community is at war, and as a community we had a celebration when we got home and it was officially over. The whole country was at war. Fast forward to Vietnam, 8% of the population is in some way involved in the military. Right? The country's not exactly supporting it in the same way as it did in World War II, but there's a draft. So everybody in some way is kind of involved in this experience. Would anyone care to take a guess how many people have served since the beginning of Afghanistan and the Iraq conflicts? Just take a mental guess. If you guessed 1%, you guessed way too high. Less than 1% of the United States population is being asked to do this combat experience. I'd estimate there's about 160 of you in the room. That translates to 1.6 of you having the exact same experience as I have. And it's even worse. The average troop, the average military service member has gone 3 times. They left everything behind. They said goodbye to their child. They went to the combat zone. They did the war thing. They kept themselves alive. They kept their buddies alive. And they completed the mission. And they thought about coming home. And then they came home. And they said, oh, I'm home. And they had a hard time readjusting. And then Uncle Sam said, oh, again. And they walked back over. And they went back to the combat zone. And they kept themselves alive and their buddies. And they did that 3 times. That's where you're going to find the average veteran of the Iraq and Afghanistan war, having that experience on 3 occasions, because there is no draft. The other thing, the third thing, or fourth thing, I'm sorry, is the lack of understanding amongst the average community about what PTSD is and how it affects veterans. Are you guys all bummed out and sad? Is there anyone in the room who's not a little bit overwhelmed? Because I can keep going on this, and I'm hoping to get to solutions. That's the next part. But I just want to make sure if there's anyone in this room who doesn't understand the enormity of this problem, 22 veterans a day. If I can change the way you think and talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, we can lessen suffering in the lives of veterans, and we can save lives. That's what I told you earlier. If I can change the way everyone in this room thinks and talks about PTSD, we'll lessen suffering and save lives. How society views post-traumatic stress disorder and the veterans who suffer from it directly affects how veterans react in terms of seeking treatment, suffering shame and guilt, and sometimes taking their own lives. We communicate how we think about PTSD through how we talk about it. And more specifically, we communicate what we think about PTSD in how we talk to those who suffer from it. So, I created 7 things you should never say to a veteran. And I hope from what I've told you today, these will make sense. So, 7 things you should never say to a veteran. 1, what'd you get to do over there? What happened? How many people you get to kill? You see any action? Must have been hot. What was your unit? What was your MOS? See any action? You got to shoot your rifle. What did I tell you was post-traumatic stress disorder? Re-experiencing. It's the first thing that veterans avoid. So when you ask a veteran any question which is your natural reaction when you first meet them of curiosity. What did you do over there? It instantly triggers re-experiencing, which triggers hyperarousal, which triggers avoidance and numbing. So when you say that, the veteran just starts to isolate and self-medicate. So we do not say what happened over there. The next one, don't say that you know a distant relative, or your uncle was in World War II, or your grandpa was in World War II, or you have a friend, Joe, down the road. I know a guy on my cubicle, he came home from Afghanistan, so he's not doing so well. It's the next thing people do is they try to attempt to somehow associate in some meaningful way to the experience. Just don't do it. If you can't admit your ignorance to the problem, you can't learn how to deal with the problem. We have a problem in this country where everybody likes to show up to the conversation with something to say. Sometimes it's okay to just not say anything. So do not say that you have some distant relative. Now, granted, if you live with a veteran, if you work with a veteran, if you're in day-to-day contract with a veteran with PTSD, then obviously you have knowledge of this. What I'm getting at is the people who have no knowledge of it and they somehow want to grasp someone out of their history or past to make it so that they're in this club. So number 2, don't say that you know a distant relative. Number 3, don't say what you would have done over there had you signed up. This one really annoys me, and it happens a lot. It usually happens from young men who play too much Call of Duty online. And it goes something like this. You know, I didn't sign up, but if I did, I probably would have been a combat ranger, Navy SEAL, high-speed sniper, and I wouldn't have PTSD, and I would have killed 100 people. And another version of this is, yeah, I'd always wanted to fly helicopters, so I think that if I signed up, I probably would have been, you know, like a helicopter pilot. Just don't do it. What it really is, in our country, we honor veterans. We don't always get it right, but we try really hard. Right? We put them on a pedestal, and we should. Veterans, when they sign up to join Uncle Sam, they sign a check for up to and including their lives in defense of their country. That is a noble and honorable thing. We honor them. But it takes a lot of courage, pain, and experience to wear that badge. When someone says what they would have done had they chosen to do that, what they are really doing is attempting to steal that honor. Don't do it. Don't say what you would have done over there. It's an attempt to steal honor. Now, I tried to make this list. It's 7 things, and we're on number 4. And I say that more for me to remember, not for you. I tried to make this list progressively harder, kind of like the military. Just each one is a little harder. So these are going to get a little more difficult and a little more maybe hard to understand. Don't say, I'm glad you made it home okay. I'm glad nothing bad happened to you. Glad you didn't get hurt. When you look at me, I'm a combat engineer, so let me count. 10 fingers and 10 toes. When you look at me, you can't see the insomnia. When you look at me, you can't see the nightmares. Maybe when you saw me pacing around the room before we started, you saw some of the hypervigilance and anxiety. But when you look at a veteran, we call it the invisible wound, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. You cannot see it physically by looking at them. But now you know that it is a real and physical change in the brain. If you had an MRI and you had a before and after, you would be able to see it plainly and clearly. But when you look at a veteran or a person, you cannot tell that they have PTSD. So when you say to them, I'm glad nothing bad happened to you, I'm glad you didn't get hurt, what you are saying is you do not have a recognizable and credible wound. And I do not recognize it. So don't say that. Number 5, get over it. Right? Get over it. Jason Moon, you've been home for 12 years. Iraq was 12 years ago. Why are you still thinking about it? Your uniform's long since been packed away. Get over it. Just stop thinking about it. I mean, you keep dwelling on it, of course you're going to have reactions. PTSD is a real and physical change in the way the brain works. I cannot get over it. No one can just get over it. I told a friend once, and usually when they say things like this to me, I have an urge to choke them to death, and then I have to override that, and then I try to do the education portion instead of the combat portion. But when they say, get over it, stop thinking about it, I say, that was the first thing I intended to do when I got off that plane. The first thing I intended to do when I was on my way to that new house. That's exactly where I was when I saw all my stuff rotting and molding. I had every intention of never thinking about it again. It's not a choice to have PTSD, and it's not something you can outthink or outwill. Do not say, get over it. The next one is kind of hard, especially for the women in the room. This will be difficult. You want to empathize. If you just went down the icy road that's full of deer to get here, and you had that experience, that near collision experience, and then I got to the conference and I said, wow, God, I just went down this icy road, and was it 94? Yeah. And there's deer all over. By the Menards? Yeah. And I swerved. I had that same experience. And you would see me and I would be like a little shaken, and you might empathize with me. It's a natural human reaction. You would say, I understand, I get it. I just had that experience too. What this does in the mind of the veterans, though, I was at a conference one time and I was talking about severe insomnia, and someone came up to me and said, when I was cramming for my PhD exams, I had to stay up for 2 whole nights straight drinking coffee, so I kind of get what insomnia is like. And when they said that to me, what happened to me was I thought I compared not the symptoms, but the underlying causes of the symptoms. And again, after I overrid the desire to choke them to death, I wanted to share with them some of the nightmares that keep me up at night. Don't empathize. When you do, in the mind of the veteran, you are comparing the symptoms with the underlying causes. Most veterans served and had this 1% of the population that has had this experience in Afghanistan and Iraq. They did it so you wouldn't have to ever have that experience. So just resist the urge to empathize. The 7. This is the hardest for all people. Do not ever offer help to a veteran unless you are absolutely 100% sure that you can follow through. This is called drive-by caring, and it's very dangerous. When a veteran is in that moment of isolation and self-medication, and when suicide has become a reality, that's when your average veteran, only when shit has hit the fan so bad and it has become untenable, that is when they are going to reach out for help. And if after this conference you feel really good about this and you feel really equipped and you really want to help veterans because Jason Moon told you all about the 22 veterans that kill each other every day, and you might be tempted to give a veteran your card and say, call me anytime if you ever need something to talk. And then later, a couple of weeks later, when the phone rings at 4 a.m., you may say to yourself, as you're wrestling your kids to sleep or you've got to get up for work, I mean, call me any time between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. When a veteran, in a moment of crisis, of isolation and self-medication, where suicide is a real option, if they reach out and they make a phone call and you don't answer that phone, I can almost guarantee you it's not going to ring again. Excuse me. So don't. If you're not in that position, never offer help to a veteran unless you absolutely, positively can follow through on it. Those are the 7 things you should never say to a veteran. So the question is then, what do we do? What do we do? How do we have a conversation with a veteran? You've told us all the things we shouldn't say. Hopefully you all understand a little bit from my personal journey that I've told you what it's like to have to go to war, what it's like to come home and not be able to readjust. I hope I've given you a brief breakdown of what post-traumatic stress disorder is and the fight, flight, or freeze response, and how that's a real physical change. And we now know that 22 veterans take their lives every single day, and that it's a really overwhelming and horrible problem. And I've equipped you with the 7 things that you should never say when you encounter a veteran, because those 7 things further isolation and they further the self-medication process. So what do we say? Now, in my mind, I want to take you, I've dreamt this up as if you're encountering a veteran. So, and because you're just all really good audience members, and you've listened really well, you're just not going to say those 7 things, right? All right, I just need to see shaking heads. That's what we do in the military. What do you say? Start the conversation with, welcome home, right? A lot of my brothers and sisters that served in the Vietnam era, they didn't get that. And it was really bad for our society to do that. So we can make up for it now. Just say, welcome home. Start the conversation there. Welcome home. To every veteran, and I know there are a few in this room, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand. For every veteran who's in this room, welcome home. Some people like to say thank you for your service. Some of the veterans that I work with are not too proud of what they were asked to do over there. I struggled with this as I thought, what is it that we should have people saying when they talk to veterans? And I found that the best thing to do is thank you for your willingness to serve. Because while veterans may not be particularly proud of the individual actions that they had to do when they were over there, they are incredibly proud that they were willing to put their life on the line when their country asked them. Welcome home. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Now, hopefully all those 7 things you're not supposed to say, and if you have to write them down like me, because I'm a combat engineer and I have to write everything down, even if you have to pull out that list, so you're running through your head and you don't say this, and you're thinking, what do I say next? Iraq for me was 12 years ago, and it haunts me every day of my life. And it's taken me incredible extreme therapy to just get to the point where I can stand on the stage and say this to you. I don't want to talk about my military experience. I want to talk about now. Welcome home. Thank you for your willingness to serve. How are you doing today? How are you feeling? What are you doing today? How are you at this moment of your life? Not that moment. How are you doing with the reintegration? How are you doing? The veteran, at this point, they're looking at you and they're going, wait. Why didn't this person ask me how many people I got to kill? That's strange. And they may even think, wow, they must have won one of those Jason Moon presentations and they know the 7 things you're not supposed to say. And they may make a conscious decision, I'm going to stop isolation for just a second here. I'm going to take a risk if they're in a really bad way, and they could say to you, I'm not doing well. I'm not sleeping. I'm drinking too much. I'm always hypervigilant. I have anxiety. I'm not functioning well at work. I'm not functioning well as a father. I'm not functioning well as a husband. I'm not doing well. Now, this is where you have to resist the empathy, right? You have to resist that urge to empathy, because that's going to be your natural reaction. I'm not doing well. I'm a veteran. Welcome home. Thank you for your service. I'm not doing well. If you have to say something, you can say, I'm sorry that you are suffering. I'm sorry that you are going through this. But do not say, don't worry, it's all going to be okay. Because that's a promise you can't keep. And we don't make promises to veterans we can't keep. Welcome home. Thank you for your willingness to serve. How are you doing? I'm not doing good. I'm having all these PTSD symptoms. And the next thing you do, the most important, fundamental thing that you do when you encounter a veteran, if we want to stop these 22 veterans killing themselves every day, and if we want to break that cycle of isolation and self-medication and the choice that suicide is an option for 22 veterans a day, listen. Just listen. It is so fundamentally and utterly simple, and it is the one thing that people rarely do. When I talk to younger people, and I don't mean to insult anyone in the room, mouth closed, ears open, heart open. Let them talk. Don't interject. Don't say what you would have done. Don't feel like you got to add to the conversation. Just let them out. Let them talk. And the longer you sit there just listening, the longer the veteran realizes they can actually start talking about it. If you want to be super duper, if you've done this now, you haven't said the 7 things, you understand about PTSD, you know about what veterans go through, you know about the 22 veterans who kill themselves every day. Learn the resources in your community. Perhaps you are one of those resources in your community. And I'm sorry if you've had to hear this and you already know it. Learn the resources in your community, where you live and work. Not drive-by caring, not just send them to go to the VA. Who at the VA? Who do they call? Who gets the job done at the VA, at your VA? And perhaps if you live in Madison or Milwaukee, there's a dry hooch center. There's all these great programs. There's Vet's Journey Home, Soldier's Heart, Warrior Songs. There's all this network from the VA, from big, gigantic, powerful bureaucracies to tiny little people like me out there in the field day after day doing the work. Find those resources in your community. Know their name, know their number. When the veteran says, I am not doing good and I don't think I can make it anymore, then you can pull that resource out of your pocket and you say, you need to call, not the VA, you need to call Bob at the VA. My friend Bob at the VA. He is good at this. You hand him the card. Now, if you want to knock it out of the park, if you want to do a grand slam and you want to be the ultimate best civilian you can be in support of veterans, the very next day or later on that day, get on the phone, call up Bob at the VA and say, Bob, I ran into a veteran today at the coffee house. His name was Dave. He's not doing very good. He's in crisis. I gave him your information. You make that connection. How many of you are Packer fans? Or football fans of any kind? Right? When the quarterback hands the running back the ball, he just doesn't kind of toss it in his direction like a business card called the VA. He makes sure that the running back has firm grasp of the ball before he hands it off. If we listen, if we understand, and we begin to listen to veterans, and they can honestly and openly start to share their burden and their stories. If we listen without judgment and we let them share the burdens, they will begin to end the isolation. They will begin to come out of that isolation, and then we can direct them to real, that's okay, to real and good and sustainable help. PTSD is not a weakness. You need to tell veterans that. You may know that. Veterans don't know that. We think it's a weakness. We think it's a flaw. We think it happens to other people. I know that's not true. You know that's not true. That's how veterans think. If we can get them to understand that PTSD is not a weakness, and we can start to listen to them, they will start to come out of that isolation, they will break the self-medication, and they will stop killing themselves at 22 a day. And we can give them real help, and it takes real work and real therapy to deal with PTSD. There's lots of good stuff out there. I'm not going to lecture you about it. I'm sure a lot of you know about it. You can consult these resources. My name is Jason Moon. I'm a combat veteran. I'm a PTSD sufferer, and I'm a suicide survivor. I'm a songwriter. I'm an entertainer, and I use the creative arts to help heal veterans. I wrote a CD. Every song you heard tonight was on a CD called Trying to Find My Home. It's the entire experience that I had. I used art to heal myself. Now I use arts to heal others. If you are a veteran in crisis, that CD is free for you. If you are working with a veteran in crisis, that CD is free for you. It's used all over the country at VAs, big and small, as a tool to get through to veterans who are in that moment of isolation and self-medication and in that crisis point. Because it's the true story and the real story of a veteran who was in that moment. I'm not going to tell you how great it is. I'm just going to tell you, if you're a veteran who needs it, it's free. If you're working with a veteran, if you know a veteran, if your grandfather's a veteran, if your brother's a veteran, anyone you know, it's free. You might be asking yourself, Jason, how do you do that? How could you possibly give out all those CDs for free to veterans? Well, they're also available for purchase for $10. All the work I do, I travel the country, I give these lectures, and I talk to veterans all over the world. All the work I do through a foundation I started called Warrior Songs. It's a nonprofit organization. I'm not going to push it any harder. Donations are accepted, they're appreciated, and they're tax deductible. I'm going to be back at that table to continue the conversation. We have about 12 minutes left, which is amazing. And I'm going to sing you one more song. Because what veterans need to do, and what we need to do, help veterans do, through our new knowledge, is to help them tell their story. And this whole conversation I've had with you in lecture has helped me personally to tell a new story. And so this is the last song on that CD. I used to write a lot of songs where I put my hopes and fears. I hadn't written a new song going on 5 long years. This war got the best of me, and so I put down my pen, trying to write a new song, but where do I begin? Sometimes I'm tired, sometimes I need help. Sometimes it takes everything I have to keep my heart beating right out of my chest. Sometimes I have no idea what it is I'm trying to do. Tonight I write a new song and bare my soul to you. 5 days without sleep and my muscles began to shake. Shadows moving on the wall, it's a nightmare while you're wide awake. All I can do is sit there and try to hold on tight. Tonight I write a new song and pray I get some rest tonight. I got a lot of prescriptions up on my medicine shelf. I'd rather not take any of them, but others seem to think it's best that I should walk through my life with this pharmaceutical helmet on. Tonight I write a new song and pray one day all them pills are gone. When I think about it long enough, I feel sorry for myself. And then I get real depressed when I start thinking about someone else who has it so much worse than me, but still does not complain. Tonight I write a new song and hang my head in shame. So if I've ever harmed you, if I've ever done you wrong, if I owe you money, if you're offended by my songs, either let me pay you back in words or catch me another time. 'Cause tonight I write a new song, yeah, I've been working overtime. Tonight I write a new song, yeah, it's been a long, long climb. Try to put the past behind me and greet the future with a smile. So it's just a simple melody to show you just how far I've come. Tonight I write a new song, let's hope there's more to come. Now I have to end this new song so I can write another one. Thank you guys very much for listening.